My younger son, who's a pilot, called me one morning. "Mom, something strange is happening," he said. "What is it, honey?" I asked. "My sister-in-law is at the house." "Yes, she is," I replied without thinking. "She's upstairs in the shower." There was a short silence, then his voice dropped to a whisper. "That's impossible, Mom. I have her passport with me right now. She just boarded my flight to France." At that very moment, I heard soft footsteps behind me. Then a calm voice said, "I'm glad you're home." My heart skipped a beat. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far my story of revenge has reached. That morning started like any other. I was washing the breakfast dishes in a hurry. My older son, David, had already gone to work early, leaving the house quiet. My 7-year-old grandson, Ethan, that clever little rascal, had been picked up by the school bus. And my daughter-in-law, David's wife, Vanessa, had just gone upstairs. "Mom, I'm going to take a quick shower," she called out softly. "Okay, dear," I replied with a smile. I had just finished putting away the last plate when the landline rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up the phone. It was my younger son, Ryan. His cheerful voice filled the room. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to say hi. I had some free time during a layover." Hearing his voice always made me feel warm inside. Ryan was my pride and joy. A co-pilot living the dream he'd had since childhood. We chatted for a bit about his flight and how work was going. He laughed, sounding happy and relaxed. But suddenly his tone changed. "Hey, Mom, something weird just happened." "What do you mean?" I asked. "My sister-in-law is at the house." I frowned. "Of course she is, honey. Vanessa's upstairs taking a shower." I could still hear the water running. She had spoken to me less than 10 minutes ago, wearing her usual white blouse. How could I be wrong? But Ryan didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing on the line. Then he spoke again slowly. "Mom, that's impossible. I have her passport right here. She just boarded my flight to France." I laughed nervously. "Oh, sweetheart, you must be mistaken. I just saw her. She told me she was going to shower." But Ryan didn't laugh with me this time. He sounded tense, like he was still trying to make sense of it. After everyone boarded, I went back for some papers I forgot, and found a passport near the gate. I was going to hand it in, but when I opened it, Mom, it was Vanessa's. Her photo, her name, everything. My heart started pounding. Still, I tried to sound calm. "Are you sure, Ryan? Maybe it belongs to someone else." But even as I said it, a cold uneasiness crept into me. Ryan sighed deeply. "Mom, I went down to the passenger cabin to check. And she's right here, sitting in first class beside a man. He looks rich, elegant. And Mom, they're talking close, like a couple." His words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I froze, gripping the phone. A couple? Impossible. I had just heard Vanessa's voice from upstairs. She was here, in this house. And right then, the sound of the shower stopped. The bedroom door opened. "Mom, who is it?" Vanessa's voice called down the stairs. I panicked. My heart raced like a drum. "Just a friend," I said quickly, trying to steady my voice. She peeked down the staircase, her hair wet and dripping. I turned away fast, stepping into the living room, the phone still pressed to my ear. "Ryan," I whispered, trembling. "I just heard her. She's here. She just finished showering. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" But Ryan's tone grew firm. "Mom, I'm looking right at her. She's sitting in front of me on this plane." I couldn't speak. My hands shook as I hung up. The phone almost slipped from my grip. The sun was shining outside, but the living room suddenly felt dark and suffocating. I sank onto the couch, gasping for air, my mind spinning with one terrifying question. If Vanessa was here, who was the woman on the plane? And if the woman on the plane was Vanessa, who was in my house? A few minutes later, Vanessa came downstairs. She was wearing a light blue dress, her hair still damp, and she smiled sweetly. "Mom, I'm heading to the market early. Want me to get you anything?" Her voice was calm, warm, like nothing strange had happened. I forced a weak smile. "Yes, dear. Bring some tomatoes," I said, though my throat was dry. She nodded, grabbed her wicker basket and walked out. I stood there, staring as she disappeared behind the gate, my heart sinking. I didn't believe Ryan would ever lie to me. He had no reason to. My boy was honest, gentle, and family-minded. But Vanessa, my daughter-in-law of many years, was just here. I saw her. I spoke to her. Could I have missed something all these years? Was there a secret in this house that I, an old woman, had never seen? I sat quietly in the living room as the afternoon light streamed through the curtains, painting golden lines across the floor. The armchair where I usually sat to knit or read stories to Ethan felt cold. Ryan's voice echoed in my mind, each word pounding like a hammer against my heart. I looked up at the family photos on the wall, David and Vanessa on their wedding day, baby Ethan in David's arms, and Ryan smiling proudly in his pilot uniform. Now all those happy moments looked hazy and uncertain. My name is Margaret Hayes, a 65-year-old widow living in a quiet middle-class neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. My husband, George, passed away 10 years ago, leaving me with two wonderful sons, David and Ryan. My entire world. David, the eldest, is a hard-working architect, always buried in blueprints. Ryan, the youngest, made his dream come true by becoming a pilot. My life revolves around David's family, his wife Vanessa, my sweet grandson Ethan, and the peaceful rhythm of this home. Vanessa was, in my eyes, the perfect daughter-in-law. Beautiful, graceful, and always neatly dressed. She cared for Ethan with so much love, and she kept the house spotless. I still remember their wedding, a cheerful celebration in her parents' backyard. Her family wasn't rich, but they gave their all to make the day special. She came into our home smiling brightly, full of confidence and charm, as if she was born to be a perfect wife and mother. I used to tell myself I was lucky to have a daughter-in-law like her. After Vanessa left for the market, I stayed at the table without realizing I was gripping the tablecloth. Ryan's call made me replay little things I'd always brushed off. There were days Vanessa said she was going to the market or visiting a friend, and when she came back, she seemed like a different person. Some days she was all sweetness, hugging Ethan and singing him to sleep. Other days she was in a bad mood and snapped at me because I didn't put the salt shaker back in its place. I told myself it was just normal mood swings for a young woman. But now I wasn't so sure. My heart felt tied in a knot, like someone was pulling at the memories I had protected for years. I remembered a moment from a few months ago. Vanessa wrote the grocery list with her right hand. Her handwriting was straight and neat. The next day, I saw her write with her left hand. The letters were loopy and awkward, like she wasn't used to it. "Since when do you write with your other hand, honey?" I asked. She laughed. "Oh, just for fun, Mom. I'm practicing." I nodded and didn't think twice. But now that memory felt sharp. I was still deep in thought when the door opened. Ethan ran in, his backpack bouncing. He hugged me tight and chirped, "Grandma, my teacher praised me today. I drew so well." I stroked his head and tried to smile, but a weight stayed on my chest. He sat down, pulled out his notebook, and showed me. "Grandma, look. Yesterday, Mom helped with my homework using her right hand and her writing was so pretty. But today she used her left hand and it looks messy." He pointed to 2 pages, one neat, one crooked. I stared at the letters and felt my heart drop. "Your mom was probably busy today, sweetheart. Maybe she was tired," I said, hiding my confusion. He looked up with those innocent eyes. "Grandma, my mom is so weird. Some days she hugs me really tight. Other days she won't even look at me." His words stabbed me. I hugged him, trying to comfort him, but my thoughts were tangled. Just then the doorbell rang. I opened it and found Mrs. Green, my kind neighbor, holding the plate Vanessa had returned yesterday. She smiled warmly, but I saw curiosity in her eyes. "Margaret, your daughter-in-law is lovely, but yesterday she gave me the plate with her left hand. You told me she's right-handed, right? Strange. Or maybe she uses both." I forced a smile. "Maybe so, Helen. Come in for tea." She nodded, but her comment stuck like a thorn. It wasn't just me, neighbors noticed too. I served tea and we chatted. As soon as she left, I sank onto the couch with my hand on my chest. I felt frozen, like the world was collapsing. That afternoon I went to the garden with the watering can. I let the water fall gently over the daisies I'd tended for years. The sun was setting, The tree shadows stretched long, but I couldn't find peace. Ethan's words, Mrs. Green's comment, and Ryan's firm voice kept circling my mind like pebbles tossed into a calm lake, ripples that wouldn't stop. I watered the plants, but my mind was elsewhere. Am I too old to notice what's happening in my own house? Or have I chosen not to see, because I wanted to believe in the happy family I dreamed of? Vanessa came back from the market with her wicker basket, held in her left hand. I clearly remembered she always used her right hand. Chopping vegetables, combing Ethan's hair, everything. I watched her set the basket on the kitchen table. "What did you buy, Vanessa?" I asked quietly, trying to sound normal while suspicion rose. She smiled politely. "Tomatoes, cilantro, and fresh fish." "Mom, I'll make that roasted fish you like tonight." "Okay." Her voice was soft as always, but I couldn't stop staring at her hands. Left then right. I nodded and turned away to wipe the table, my heart thumping. Was I imagining things, or were these tiny details warning me? At dinner, everyone gathered. David looked tired but still asked Ethan about school with a smile. Vanessa ate slowly and reminded David, "Honey, the parent-teacher conference is next week. Please take the day off." I studied her face, trying to see the daughter-in-law I used to be so proud of. But Ryan's words kept echoing. "She's sitting in first class next to a man." I bit my lip, the feeling like a stone stuck in my throat. 3 days later, everything shifted. Ethan dropped a glass at dinner, splashing water on the tablecloth. I grabbed a rag and laughed. "It's okay, honey. Be more careful." Vanessa frowned and snapped. "Ethan, why are you so clumsy? Be careful." I stared at David. He frowned too. "Vanessa, it was an accident. That's all." She shot him a sharp look. "You always defend him, and I end up the bad one in this house." The air turned heavy. Ethan lowered his head, eyes filling with tears. I hugged him, aching inside. A few days ago she gently reminded him about school. Now she was someone else. I sat beside her in silence, trying to piece it together. Today she was irritable. The other day she was sweet. Today left-handed. The other day right-handed. Each tiny difference stacked up like puzzle pieces I couldn't yet see. "Calm down," I told myself. But every time I looked at Vanessa, she felt like a stranger, not the woman I'd lived with for years. A few days later, I walked Ethan to school along the same cobblestone street. He held my hand. Suddenly he stopped and said sadly, "Grandma, yesterday Mom taught me to write and she was so patient. Her handwriting was so pretty. But today she wouldn't even look at my homework. She told me to do it by myself." I knelt and looked into his clear eyes. My heart broke. "Your mom was busy, honey. Don't be sad," I said, but my voice shook. He nodded, still disappointed. I hugged him, feeling helpless. He's only 7. How can he understand what even I can't? That night at dinner, Vanessa took a small notebook from her bag and began writing with her left hand. David, serving himself food, chuckled. "Hey, since when do you write left-handed? It looks odd." Vanessa froze, then forced a smile. "Just experimenting, honey." She tucked the notebook away quickly, and I caught a flash of panic in her eyes. David shook his head and let it go, but I knew he noticed it too. I held my spoon tightly, keeping a straight face while doubt burned slowly inside me. One morning, I carried an empty spice jar across the cobblestone street to Mrs. Green's house. Vanessa had borrowed it weeks ago for her favorite chili. Mrs. Green opened the door with her usual warm smile. "Margaret, come in. Let me make you some coffee," she said, a cleaning rag still in her hand. I gave her the jar, ready to thank her and leave, but she pulled out a wooden chair for me in the kitchen. The room felt cozy, smelled like roasted coffee, but I couldn't relax. She lowered her voice. "Margaret, please don't be upset. Has your daughter-in-law changed? One day she greets me so sweetly and asks about my kids. Yesterday I waved and she didn't even acknowledge me, like she didn't know me." Her words were another stone tossed into my restless heart. "She must have been in a hurry, Helen." "You know how young people are," I said with a shaky smile. But inside I was a mess. Mrs. Green is observant. She doesn't talk for nothing. If she noticed it too, then my worries weren't just in my head. I stayed a bit longer, sipped the now cold coffee, and left with a heavy heart. On the way home, I stopped at Mr. Harris's bakery for Ethan's sweetbread. "Mrs. Hayes, what can I get for the little champ today?" he asked with a smile. I ordered pastry and he added, "You're David's mom, right? Your son's wife came in the other day. So nice." She praised my bread. But this morning she came back with a scowl and didn't even say thank you. I froze and gripped my purse. "She must be tired, Joe," I said, my voice trembling. I thanked him and left quickly. His words cut deeper into my growing doubts. Back home, I made tea and sat on the porch. A soft breeze carried the scent of daisies from the garden. I looked toward the street leading to the market, the same path Vanessa always walked. Soon I saw her coming back with her shopping bag. "Good afternoon, Mom," she said flatly. No smile. No cheerful mood like yesterday when she bragged about a good price on cilantro. "You're back already," I replied softly, watching closely. She wore a navy blouse, not the white one she left in. "Why did you change your blouse?" I asked gently. She paused a second. "Oh, I stained it and had to change," she said, half smiling before hurrying into the kitchen. I sat there with my teacup, feeling a rock pressing on my chest. Mrs. Green's words, Mr. Harris's story, and Vanessa's quick answer. All of it made it impossible to keep ignoring things. That night at dinner, Ethan chatted happily about school, but Vanessa only nodded and didn't really reply like she usually did. When David asked, "Are you finished so your mom can clear the plates?" Ethan turned to me and said, "Grandma, my mom didn't sing me to sleep. Yesterday she sang that song, Cielito Lindo, the one you always sing to me, and it sounded so beautiful." I looked at Vanessa, who kept serving herself without reacting. Ethan's words pricked my heart. That lullaby, Cielito Lindo, the one I used to sing to David and Ryan. Only Vanessa and I knew it in this house. So why sing it yesterday but not today? Why change so fast? I stood to clear the plates, but my mind was far away. I remembered the times Vanessa said she was visiting a friend and came home looking strange. One day she brought fresh flowers and said a friend gave them to her. Another day she got angry when I asked, "Where did you go today? You're late." I used to think those were small things. Now they felt like pieces of a bigger secret. I didn't want to believe Vanessa was hiding something, but every word and gesture made me doubt. That night, after I cleaned the kitchen, I sat at the dining table and pulled an old notebook from a drawer. My hand shook as I wrote the first line. 3 p.m. Vanessa leaves for the market. 6 p.m. returns wearing a blue blouse. Irritable mood. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. I kept writing. Yesterday, she sang Ethan to sleep, tender. Today she was cold, didn't sing. Each line felt heavy, like I was carving my suspicions into stone. My old notebook was now packed with notes about Vanessa. Every line felt like another piece of doubt, as if I was painting a picture I didn't want to see. I sat in the kitchen staring at it with a heavy heart. I couldn't keep all these thoughts inside anymore. They rose and fell like waves and left me alone with my confusion. I needed someone to talk to, someone who'd understand, not judge, and not jump to conclusions. I thought of Linda, my best friend since we were young, when we used to sit under a tree knitting and telling each other everything. I picked up the phone, my voice shaking. "Linda, are you free this afternoon? Let's meet at the coffee shop on the corner. I need to talk." She agreed right away, warm as always. "Margaret, I knew something was off. Wait for me, I'm coming." I felt a small relief, though the worry still pressed on me. I put on my old shawl and walked to the little coffee shop where Linda and I had shared so many joys and sorrows. Nothing had changed, the dark wooden tables, the smell of fresh coffee. I chose a dim corner so no one would overhear us. I hugged the hot mug, but inside I felt cold. How was I going to tell her all of this? How could I admit I was doubting my own daughter-in-law? Linda arrived in a light sweater, carrying a bag of fresh vegetables. She sat and met my eyes with that sharp, kind look. "Margaret, just looking at you, I can tell something serious is wrong. Go on, say it. What's worrying you?" I breathed in, trying not to let my voice crack, but the words still stuck in my throat. I told her everything in brief. Ryan's call from the airport, Vanessa's passport, the woman identical to her on the plane, and all the little things I'd written down. The switching hands when she wrote, her mood changing from one day to the next. I took the notebook from my bag and handed it to her. Look, I wrote it all here. I don't know if I'm imagining it, but I can't be a fool anymore. Linda flipped through the pages, frowning, reading my shaky handwriting slowly. You've noticed everything, Margaret, she said, serious. Every time she leaves and comes back, it's like she's someone else. What do you think it is? I gripped the cup. I don't know, Linda. I'm just scared. Scared that Vanessa is hiding something. Scared my family will fall apart if I dig deeper. But I can't stop. I have to know the truth, for David, for Ethan. Linda set her cup down and looked at me with resolve. You can't fool a woman's instincts, Margaret. What does your gut say? Something shady is going on. You need to get to the bottom of it. I hesitated and whispered, but what if I'm wrong about her? What if I hurt David? Linda cut in firm. Trust your gut. If you don't find the truth, you'll live with doubt. And then you can't protect David or Ethan. Just then Mrs. Porter, the vegetable seller from the market, walked into the shop. She spotted me and smiled. Mrs. Hayes, what a coincidence. Last week I saw your daughter-in-law at the market. She was so kind. She even bought extra cilantro to cook with. But this morning she came by again looking so serious. She didn't even say hello. Bought her vegetables and left. Is something wrong with your daughter-in-law? I forced a smile. She must be tired, Marie. Inside, I felt like I was drowning. Someone else had noticed Vanessa's odd behavior too. I thanked Mrs. Porter, watched her leave, and turned back to Linda with panic in my eyes. Linda took my hand, her voice gentler. See, Margaret? It's not just you. The neighbors notice it too. Don't lie to yourself anymore. Keep writing everything down. And if you have to, follow her. Not to hurt her, but to protect your family. I nodded and my heart sank. She was right. But the thought of following my own daughter-in-law felt like a betrayal. I'd spent my whole life caring for this home. Now I had to do something I never imagined. Investigate one of my own. That afternoon I went home with my thoughts still spinning. Vanessa left the house carrying her familiar red basket. Mom, I'm going to the market for a bit, she said softly. I nodded, and as soon as she slipped through the gate, I opened my notebook and wrote, 3 p.m. Vanessa leaves for the market with red basket. Normal mood. I watched the clock, counting every minute. At 6, Vanessa returned, but now she was holding a blue basket. Did you switch baskets? I asked, surprised. She smiled quickly. Yes, the other one broke and a friend lent me this. I nodded and added to the notebook, with shaking hands. 6 p.m. returns with blue basket. Voice a little rushed. The notes kept piling up. Each line felt like a step closer to the truth. And a step away from the image of the trusting, loving mother I had always been. On the weekend, David left early for overtime. And Ethan had a school activity. The house was quiet, just Vanessa and me. I cleaned the dining table, trying to stay busy and keep my doubts at bay. Then Vanessa came downstairs in a pale yellow floral dress, looking as fresh as she did in her early married days. Mom, I'm going to the market for a bit, she said gently. She grabbed her usual wicker basket and left. I smiled and nodded, but inside a voice insisted, follow her, Margaret. Find the truth. I didn't think twice. I pulled my old shawl over my head to shade my face and slipped out, keeping a safe distance behind her. The sun was hot, sweat soaked my back, but I didn't care. I just wanted to know where she was really going. Vanessa walked down the cobblestone street toward the market. Then suddenly, instead of turning right like always, she turned left into an alley behind a working-class neighborhood. The houses were old and cramped, with peeling paint and rusty tin roofs. I slowed down, heart pounding, hiding behind some bicycles on the sidewalk. She never looked back. She kept walking into a narrower lane where sunlight barely reached. I ducked behind a mechanic's shop where a man was tightening bolts. I watched Vanessa stop at an old wooden door, knock softly, and go inside. My breath hitched. What was she doing there? This wasn't the market or any friend's place she'd mentioned. I wanted to march over, knock, and ask her outright, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I was afraid of the truth, afraid it would break everything. In the end, I turned around and walked home, each step heavier than the last. I pushed open our gate and froze. Vanessa was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables in a white blouse, totally different from the floral dress she'd left in. She frowned and looked at me with cold, sharp eyes. "Where did you go, Mom? You're just coming back now." I stood there, mouth dry, unable to speak. Minutes ago I'd seen her enter that alley in a yellow dress. How was she home so fast? And what about the blouse? I just went for a walk," I stammered. Vanessa nodded and said nothing more, but her stare sent a chill through me. I went to my room pretending to look for something, when really I just needed to escape that look and calm my pounding heart. That night I was knitting when Ethan ran into my room, his cheeks red from playing outside. He hugged my legs and sobbed. "Grandma," Mom yelled at me just because I dropped a pencil. Not like yesterday. Yesterday she was so nice she even hugged me. I gathered him close and stroked his head, but inside I was burning. "Your mom was tired, honey. Don't be sad," I said, my voice shaking. He buried his face in my shoulder and whispered, "Grandma, I want the mom from yesterday." I held him tighter, my eyes stinging. His words carved my suspicions even deeper. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling while images replayed. Vanessa in the floral dress entering the alley. Vanessa in a white blouse standing in our kitchen. And Ryan's voice, "She's on my flight." I took the notebook from the drawer and wrote a single sentence I barely dared to think. Maybe they are not the same person. The words felt like a curse and made me tremble. The next morning I decided to go back to that alley. I couldn't stand the doubt. I took the family photo from the living room, the one where Vanessa smiles next to David and Ethan, held it tight, and left the house scared but determined. The alley looked the same, quiet and gloomy. I stopped by a corn stand where a middle-aged woman was fanning charcoal. I showed her the photo. "Excuse me, have you seen this young woman around here?" She studied it and pointed. "Oh yes, of course. She often comes and goes from number 14. That one there." I thanked her, my heart hammering, and walked to the house. Number 14 had stained walls, a peeling wooden door, and a pot with a wilted daisy on the window. I stood there with trembling hands, feeling like the whole world held its breath with me. I knocked. Each knock echoed in my chest. The door opened, and I was speechless. A woman stood there, identical to Vanessa. Same face, same body, same long black hair. The only differences were the fear in her eyes and her shaking hands clutching a rag. "Hey, Vanessa," I stammered. She jumped, gripped the rag tighter, and tried to shut the door. But another voice came from inside, soft but firm. "Isabella, don't hide anymore. You know this is wrong too." A young woman stepped from the corner and stood behind the one who looked like Vanessa. She was slim, hair in a bun, with a smart, kind expression. She gave me a small smile. "My name is Chloe Adams, Isabella's roommate, Mrs. Hayes. Please come in. It's time you knew the truth." I took a deep breath to steady my legs and stepped into the small, tin-roofed house. The walls were stained, the concrete floor cracked, and a faint smell of disinfectant hung in the air. In one corner, an old man coughed weakly on a cot covered with a worn blanket. The room pressed in on me, but I sat in the wooden chair Chloe offered. The woman who looked like Vanessa lowered her gaze and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm not Vanessa. My name is Isabella." I stared, my thoughts spinning. Isabella. The name was new, but the face was painfully familiar. I clasped my hands to keep my voice steady. "Explain why you look exactly like my daughter-in-law, and why you've been showing up at my house." Isabella looked up, guilt in her eyes, but she didn't answer right away. Chloe poured a glass of water from an old plastic jug and spoke calmly. "Isabella is very poor, Mrs. Hayes. Her adoptive parents are very sick, especially the gentleman lying there. A few years ago, she met Vanessa by chance at a market. They looked like twins, and Vanessa took advantage of that. She asked Isabella to pretend to be her, to replace her for a few hours whenever she needed it. Isabella didn't want to, but Vanessa paid well, and her family needed money for medicine." I looked at Isabella. Her head was bowed, the rag crushed in her fists until her knuckles turned white. Replace her for what? I pressed, stunned. Why would Vanessa need someone to pretend to be her? Isabella lifted her eyes, voice trembling. "I don't know everything, ma'am." She would tell me. Just stay in the house for a few hours, do things like go to the market, look after the boy, and then she'd give me money. A lot, enough to buy my parents medicine. I didn't dare ask more. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I watched her and felt my chest tighten. Suddenly everything fit. The switching hands when writing, the sweet days and the cold days, the gentle voice and the sharp one. The last pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see clicked into place. Chloe's eyes sharpened. I don't know if this helps, but once I saw Vanessa with a very elegant man. His name is Richard Morgan. Chloe said she heard the name at a coffee shop. They were talking sweetly and calling each other, honey. At that time, Isabella was waiting outside in the car, not understanding anything. The name Richard Morgan cut through me. I remembered Ryan's words. She's sitting in first class next to a rich man. The little room started to spin. I tried to stay calm, but my hands shook so much I knocked over my water. Chloe rushed to wipe it up, but I just shook my head. My voice came out tight. Vanessa is deceiving my family. Isabella broke down, sobbing. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to save my parents. I looked at this young woman who had Vanessa's same face, but eyes full of pain and regret. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout. But seeing Isabella, I only felt pity. She wasn't the mastermind. She was a piece in Vanessa's game. Everything was falling apart in front of me. I stood, trying to keep my voice steady. Isabella, do you know where Vanessa goes? Do you know what she does when she asks you to pretend to be her? She shook her head through tears. I don't know, ma'am. She just told me to do what she asked and that she'd pay me. I didn't dare ask questions. Chloe laid a gentle hand on her shoulder, then looked at me. Mrs. Hayes, I know this hurts, but Isabella is a victim too. She had no choice. I glanced around the small house, heard the weak cough of the man on the cot, and understood Isabella's desperation. But it didn't erase the feeling of betrayal. I clenched my fists to hold back tears. I don't blame you, Isabella. But I need the truth. I have to protect my son and my grandson. I got up, feeling the world press down on me. Thank you, Chloe, for telling me. I'll be back. I stepped outside. The sun was harsh, but my heart felt cold. The next morning, I returned to that alley. The stained walls and peeling door had become an obsession. The heat was strong, yet I felt a chill inside, like a cold wind of unanswered questions. I knocked on number 14, gripping my family photo like an amulet. This time Isabella looked calmer. She opened the door with shy steadiness. Mrs. Hayes, I was expecting you. Please come in. The house was still small, smelling of disinfectant. The sick man coughing weakly. I sat in the old wooden chair. Isabella wore a simple blouse. Her hair was in a loose bun. She looked tired but no longer terrified. I took a breath and spoke softly. Isabella, I want to meet your adoptive mother. I need to understand. She led me to a corner where a very thin woman with white hair lay staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Walker, her adoptive mother. I took her frail hand. I'm Margaret Hayes, David's mother. Vanessa is his wife. Mrs. Walker looked at me, breathing with effort. Isabella isn't my blood. I adopted her when she was a newborn. Her words hit me like a hammer. My heart sped up, but I kept my voice calm. Please tell me how. She coughed, then began. Many years ago, I was a nurse at a small-town hospital. A very poor family had twins. They were so poor they couldn't keep both. The mother cried. She said she could only keep one. The other would be abandoned. I couldn't let that happen, so I adopted the baby. That's Isabella. She paused to cough again, then looked at Isabella with deep love. I raised her like my own. She's always wanted to find her real parents. I have nothing to give her except my love and this house. My head spun. Do you know who her biological parents are? I asked. Mrs. Walker shook her head. I only know they were a poor family from a nearby town. I didn't ask more. I just wanted to save the child. I looked at Isabella. Her head was bowed. Tears fell. Mrs. Hayes, I don't know anything about my real parents, she said, voice shaking. When I met Vanessa, I thought maybe she knew something. We look so alike. But she never told me. I couldn't breathe. I asked Mrs. Walker if I could see any old papers. She pointed to a wooden dresser. Isabella took out a yellowed envelope and handed it to me. Inside were copies of hospital documents, Isabella's date of birth. I read them and felt my heart stop. Isabella's birth date was exactly the same as Vanessa's, the date I'd seen on Vanessa's papers when she married David. My hands trembled as I looked at Isabella. "You and Vanessa might be twin sisters," I whispered. Isabella covered her face and cried. "So Vanessa is my sister. Why didn't she tell me? Why did she make me do all that?" I thought of the days Vanessa came into our home glowing and confident, like the perfect wife and mother. I had loved her. I believed she'd make David happy. But now I knew she had deceived my family and used her own sister as a double to hide secrets I didn't dare imagine. I stood, laid a hand on Isabella's shoulder, and tried to keep my voice firm even as it hurt. "Isabella, from today, I won't let anyone use you again. I'll help with your parents' treatment. But I need your help too. We must bring the truth to light, for David and for Ethan." She nodded through tears. "I'll help. I don't want to live this lie anymore." I saw honesty in her eyes, and for the first time I felt a small ray of hope in the storm. I left the house and walked through the alley with my soul in turmoil. I passed the noisy market, people laughing, shopping. But in my mind, Mrs. Walker's words rang like bells. 2 twins, one abandoned, one raised. And now their paths had crossed in my family. I went home feeling like a field after a storm. The truth about Vanessa and Isabella, the secret of the twins, sat on my chest like a stone. I was at a crossroads. Confront my daughter-in-law, who had deceived us all, and tell David and Ethan the truth. That night, I called Ryan. My voice sounded firm, even though my heart shook. "Ryan, come home tomorrow night. There are things you need to help clarify." He sounded worried. "Mom, did something serious happen?" "You just come, honey. I need you. And bring Vanessa's electronic passport if you can." He didn't ask more. "Yes, Mom. I'll be there." I hung up and sat down, feeling the world crash over me. I knew tomorrow night would be unforgettable for our family. The next day I got up early and prepared a big dinner. I spread a white tablecloth, lit candles, cooked David's favorite chili and the roasted fish Ethan always asks for. This wasn't a celebration. It was a line in the sand, a before and after. I chopped vegetables while my mind wandered back to that alley and Isabella's words. "Be strong, for David, for Ethan." Every slice felt like it cut my own heart. David came home at dusk, tired. He looked at the table, surprised. "What are we celebrating? Why so much food, Mom?" I smiled gently. "I just want us all to have a nice dinner. Sit, honey." Vanessa came in wearing a light blue dress, a soft smile, and a hint of nerves in her eyes. Ethan ran to me, excited. "Grandma, the fish smells so good." I stroked his head with a lump in my throat. I feared that after tonight, his smile would never be so carefree again. We sat. At first, the mood was light. David talked about work. Ethan chattered about his drawing from school. Vanessa nodded and added a few comments. But I noticed her hand shaking slightly as she held her spoon. I took a breath and signaled to Ryan waiting outside. He came in, and right behind him was Isabella in a simple dress, her face identical to Vanessa's, but lined with anguish. Silence fell. Ethan looked from Vanessa to Isabella, confused. "Why are there 2 moms?" he asked. David turned pale and dropped his spoon. Vanessa jumped up, shouting, "What is this, Mom?" I stood, gripping the table edge to steady myself. "Sit down, Vanessa," I said, slow and firm. "We need to clear everything up." I told the story, each word tearing me inside. Ryan's call from the airport. Vanessa on a flight to France while she was home. The changing writing hands. The sweet days and the sour ones. My trip to the alley. Meeting Isabella. The twins. "You and Isabella are twin sisters," I said, looking straight at her. "You used your sister to hide the truth. Tell us what that truth is." Vanessa trembled, her face white. "She's making this up to humiliate me. How dare you?" Ryan stepped forward and dropped a stack of papers on the table. "This is a copy of your electronic passport, with entry and exit stamps from France," he said coolly. "You can't be home and flying to France at the same time." Vanessa stared at the papers, lips pressed tight, saying nothing. Ethan, sitting beside her, said softly, hurt in his voice. It's true, Grandma. Some days my mom is an angel. Other days she's really mean. I don't like the mean mom. His words stabbed me. The air grew heavy. It was hard to breathe. I nodded toward Chloe, who had slipped in through the back door. With a steady gaze, she said, I saw Vanessa with Richard Morgan. They called each other honey. She hired Isabella to pretend to be her and deceive the family. David turned to his wife, voice breaking. Is it true, Vanessa? Tell me, is it true? Vanessa bit her lip in long silence, then suddenly screamed, rage spilling out. Yes, it's true. I have a lover. I'm tired of this poor life. I'm tired of being the daughter-in-law in this house. Richard gives me a life 100 times better. And you, David, you're good for nothing. Her words exploded like a bomb. David froze, fists clenched until they turned white. Ethan burst into tears and ran to me. Grandma, what did my mom say? I held him tight as tears ran down my face. I looked at Vanessa, cold, without a hint of regret. David stood, voice shaking. Vanessa, do you really think that? She didn't answer. She turned and walked out. Isabella, who had been quiet, spoke in a low, clear voice. Sister, you didn't have to hurt them like this. I just wanted to help you. I didn't know you'd go this far. Vanessa glared at her and left. The door slammed, and the room fell into a painful silence. After that night, the house felt empty, like the life had been sucked out. The living room that once held Ethan's laughter and David's stories sat in a heavy quiet. I had lived my whole life for my family, and now I felt like someone standing in the wreckage after a storm. Vanessa left with those bitter words, leaving David hollow and Ethan in tears. I knew everything had changed forever. A week later, David and Vanessa went to court for the divorce. I didn't go. David told me later, voice dry, soul gone. Mom, she didn't look at me or Ethan. She signed the papers and left with that man like we never existed. I sat beside him and held his hand, trying not to cry. Vanessa didn't ask for custody, as if Ethan had been part of a play she'd grown bored of. My heart ached, not only for David, but for a 7-year-old boy who didn't deserve to be abandoned. Don't worry, honey, I said, voice trembling. I'm here. Ethan will never be without love. But I knew this wound would take time to heal. David fell quiet. He buried himself in work or sat watching Ethan play in the yard. In his eyes I saw the same sadness my husband, George, had near the end, when he knew he couldn't stay. I wanted to promise David everything would be okay, but I didn't know where to start. Thankfully, Isabella became a small light in the darkness. She came every day with warm food, sat and played with Ethan, and wiped his tears when he asked, Auntie, where did my mom really go? I looked at Isabella, same face as Vanessa, but a completely different heart. She was gentle, patient, and always found a way to make Ethan laugh. One afternoon, Ethan ran up and hugged her. In his bright little voice he said, Mom, Isabella, teach me how to draw a little bird. I froze, my heart tight. He called her mom with a carefree smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Isabella laughed and stroked his head. Of course, my love, but you have to draw it nicely so I can admire it. I stood there with tears in my eyes. Ethan's innocent words soothed my pain. I knew Isabella hadn't just filled in for Vanessa during those days of deception. She was becoming part of our family with her own sincere heart. That night, while I was cleaning the kitchen, David called me to the living room. He stood there holding a small ring, hands trembling, nervous but determined. Isabella was beside him, cheeks flushed, eyes shining. David knelt, his voice breaking. Isabella, I don't want to waste any more time. You brought the light back to me and to Ethan. Will you be my wife and Ethan's mom? Isabella burst into tears and glanced at me, as if asking for my blessing. I walked over, took her hand and nodded gently. You deserve this, honey. You've been part of this family for a long time. She hugged me, her tears soaking my shoulder. I knew our healing had begun. Their wedding came soon after, simple, but full of love. In the yard, red roses were tied to the fence. Ethan, in his little suit, giggled as he stood beside his dad as the tiniest best man. Ryan flew back from a work trip and stood by his brother, smiling as brightly as the day he first wore his pilot's uniform. I sat in the front row with tears on my cheeks, not tears of loss, but of joy. I looked at Isabella in her simple dress, holding David's hand, and knew our family had found a truly kind heart. After losing a fraud, life finally felt normal again. Isabella kept her simple, steady routine, loving David and Ethan with all she had. She cooked warm meals, and at night she sang Ethan to sleep with the same Cielito Lindo I used to sing to my boys. Every evening she sat with David, listening to him talk about blueprints and projects, pride in her eyes. Ethan stopped asking about his other mom. He just curled up beside Isabella, calling her mom with a bright, easy smile. I watched our home, and the wounds slowly closed. Late one night, I sat on the porch while a soft breeze moved through the garden. From inside I heard Ethan's laughter mixing with Isabella's sweet voice. I peeked in and saw David focused on his work while Isabella set a cup of tea by his hand and kissed his forehead. I smiled, finally at peace. I thought about the long road from my first doubts, Ryan's call, that dark alley, and the truth we uncovered. The truth was harsh, but like my husband George used to say, the truth will set you free, Margaret. And it did. It set us free. It brought us Isabella and gave us a new beginning, brighter and happier. The story you just heard has changed names and places to protect everyone's identity. We're not sharing this to judge anyone, but in the hope that someone listening will pause and think about how many mothers are suffering in silence in their own homes. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or would you find the courage to face everything and take back your voice? I want to hear your thoughts, because every story is like a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I truly believe courage leads us to better days. On the screen, I'll leave 2 of the channel's most loved stories. I'm sure they'll surprise you. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for staying with me till the end.